Do you think that communities get burnt out?
I think if you're talking about Calabaran specifically, because
Well,
I don't know. That's one example. There was a project that lasted for 10 years. More than a burnout, what happened there was that, and everyone that works in the regions understand that, is that there is usually in a small town things happen because there are 4 or 5 key players, individuals that make anything happen. And we had those people on board when we started. At some point, they all left. One died, one went, 2 people moved because she was married to the local policeman. Another person started their own business and was extremely busy and for different reasons. Many of our key players left. And that means that we missed that that kind of energy of those key players. So I would say that the burnt out, I think there are a lot of burnt out happens in the country, and my experience is that it is because there are a few people that do a lot of work and try and pull well above their weight, while there are other people that don't, and that is how it happens. I don't think we really impose too much on the community. We generate all the money just about from outside and we brought it into town. So we pay for everything. So we usually just ask the people to provide accommodation, the minimum, and for the new partners in Calabaran, we paid for our accommodation. And also just to participate in the project to help us to work as a community liaison.
I was wondering, Marco, because I followed Lucas Eileen's project, years ago on the email project. I've forgotten the name of that. Something Kilburn. But he really engaged with.
Blog, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Blogging.
Yeah.
But he really engaged with the community, and in fact, he sort of blogged them, which was really quite sort of risky in a way. And I'm not sure how the community reacted to that in the end. In fact, some of his blogs were all about, he would blog what he did every day, which was walking around the community, and he might meet people and then he'd talk about that on his blog. But people in the town didn't realise he was actually going to talk about it on a blog, and people in Sydney would be commenting on that. So it was, there were lines he crossed. But I was wondering if what the effect on the community was, not just what Purdy was saying, but have you gone back to those communities and found that more people are interested in art, or, there's a lot of artists now in Calabaran growing up? Because I know Lucas did a lot of workshops with young people there too.
Yes, this is a question that always comes up, and it's one of the most difficult ones to answer because I don't know, and I think there is also enough, if you like, an official requirement that there are some, if you like, parameter to measure the effects of what you do. I usually try to avoid the question by using some kind of examples. Like, for example, I remember there was a Dutch artist that worked for us. She was an installation artist, and she went to do our usual workshops we do with the schools. She came back laughing, and she said, "Look, I've done this workshop all over the world. That's the first time that the school kids didn't ask me what you paint, but asking what's your medium." So, because we only had one painter in the course of 10 years in Calabaran, people accepted pretty quickly that people could do the strangest things. Look, we haven't really spent time to measure what effects that has done. I can tell you the effects it's done on the artist, because in many ways what I do, it's more for the benefit of art than for the benefit of community. Because I think in this relationship, because non-specialist communities survive very well without art, but I think that art doesn't survive very well without, if it loses touch with general society in general. So we're doing this more for the artists, anyway, for art in general, than we do it for the community. Community, they enjoy it. it doesn't cost them much, cost anything. So
yeah. No, it's a wonderful project. I think it's extraordinary. I don't know of any others quite like it actually. The way the balance in that. Anyway, any other questions?
no question.
Yeah.
I was actually very interested in Steve. You're making this effort to maintain a community with the previous residents, which is very interesting because I thought about that and I forgot about it at some point. I was thinking how productive it is if we manage to keep this growing community, obviously, and to keep it alive of alumni, if you like. Maybe can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, certainly. It's not every. The interest, I suppose, one of the interesting things is not everyone's on Facebook. So not everyone that's in the building or has been resident can't be part of this part of the program. But it's an opportunity for people to share information about what they're doing, to keep in touch, and it's very informal. And I think it does work. You know, what we have found is that by keeping those connections alive with previous artists that have been in residence, they have found ways to come back. We have had a number of artists that have interstate artists that have done short-term residencies in a few years ago that have said it's been unfinished business, so they've come back and they've continued their relationships either with artists in the building or other artists working locally. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, I'm just thinking, you know, if it was a success, so it is something that you are. Is working?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I feel that, you know, there's been a number of panellists that have talked about their area, their ARI being niche, and we're very aware of that and aware that although we do have this open call out for artists, there's always the artists that apply again that have space, and they have unfinished business as well. They're in the middle of a project and they know how things work, and they can write really good applications. So I think that finding a way to connect old and current artists in the building is really important, and to share that information about what's going on is really important.
Yeah, I years ago, well, I don't know if it was years ago, but it was I went to a performance-based event by PVI, sorry. Yeah, that was fantastic. It was very like live theatre in public space where they took us around on a bus all through Sydney with an orange man running beside the bus, which was very, very kind of strange and uncanny, and it doesn't sound much, but just to have this guy in orange running beside the bus was very kind of disturbing.
Right.
Yeah. So whenever you do produce work, is it always in public space like that?
Yeah, PVI essentially makes work in non-traditional art spaces. Many years ago, we did make work in venues, but we would always find ways to, you know, have a door open and exit the building and maybe project back what we were doing outside. And after a while, we became really interested in kind of the politics of public space and some of the issues that we were finding in making work in those kind of spaces. So we were a group of 6 artists, and I like to collaborate. When I did my degree many years ago, I kind of, it wasn't a particularly good solo artist, so I spent a lot of time collaborating with other people and in conversations. So I was keen to continue that with the idea of a collective. And I suppose our extended family is the residents in this building, so I really enjoy the dialogue, and I really enjoy a good cup of tea as well.
Yes.
This one I suppose is for the whole panel, but for Steve particularly. CIA kind of encourage residents to take risks with what they create, and I think that that's a key element of maybe cultivating audiences for art is encouraging them to take risks, and certainly PBI do that with their audience members. Do you have any thoughts about how ARIs could get their audiences to take more risks and therefore build the audiences that come to these ARI events? Or does that make sense?
Wow, that's an amazing question. I need to think about that.
Yeah, sorry. Does anyone have any?
Back tomorrow.
I'll send you an email.
Wow. Well, look, I hope that, perhaps I can talk to you after this event. Because really that's something I would really like to think about, and if any way I can help. I think that idea of risk, I'll just pick up on risk. That's something really, I think key to PBI's practice, and I think that it was great to have somebody along from DCA today and talking about an ARI initiative that they're now rolling out for future projects. And when we approached them back in 2008, there wasn't anything like that. And we felt that we couldn't go into a project round and apply for funding for this initiative. And I suppose we took the risk of calling up and seeing if they would be interested in hearing an idea that we had. So I suppose my top tip is to think in between the traditional funding patterns that perhaps boards like that have, and that you can knock on their door. And if you have an idea, they do have strategic funding and strategic money that if they think it's a good idea, they will put it forward. And that's certainly where we found we were at. And it's certainly been amazing to have that support from DCA. I think there's not been anything quite like it, really. We're very grateful for it.
Can I just say something about this very quickly? I just feel that, I think PAI is a good example, but not only that, many other of this project that's been discussed today, what is actually really needed, which is called institutional imagination. That is to say that when you actually decide to embark in creating an art organization, as small as it is, there are existing models that are on the shelf, right? That you can look at, artist-run spaces, residential spaces, and so forth. I think it is important to kind of revise those models, see if they suit what you want to do, and don't just accept them as, if you like, a ready-made, a ready-to-wear kind of fashion. Just go for the tailor-made thing. I'm saying this simply because I was actually at part of PICA, when PICA was Praxis Gallery in Fremantle, and there was an opportunity for a massive increase of funding through the then state Labour government to occupy this building where PICA is now and create a new institution. But what they actually did, the idea was that they look at the ICA in London and they just copied it, and without thinking that Perth is not London, and that the needs and the situation is a different one. So it was really not a big attempt. I can tell you because I was witnessing, although I was not directly involved, but I was the editor of Praxis magazine, but I was part of the board and so forth. It was fundamentally, the idea was to just import this kind of model. And I think that I would kind of encourage people to kind of be creative with the organization that you create. You don't have to do exactly what everyone else has done. So you can just be realistic not only in the artwork, but also in the structure to present and produce and distribute art.
Did you want to comment on that?
the audience taking risks? Absolutely fantastic question. And I think I'm quite interested in the broadening of undergraduate education that's occurring at the moment, where students, I think it's happening across all unis, but at UWA, where students are encouraged to take quite a few units outside of their area of academia. And we've experienced at UWA, we were absolutely flooded with students. We're getting 500 a semester coming through the visual arts department. And these are individuals who are studying law, commerce, engineering. I'm very optimistic about the future of this state because I grasped that opportunity to infiltrate them and sort of open their minds to things that are going on around them, and hoping that they will be they will start taking risks and engage in what we're trying to do. And if that happens, it'll be a good thing.
Great. Okay, thanks. I'm not sure if that's... Oh, is that another question? No. Is it nearly time? I just wanted to say one last thing about ARIs and community. I don't know if any of you know Catherine Gibson's work. She's a sort of economic geographer, and she's written about small communities and how we can take these ideas of small communities into, and if we took them seriously, into a sort of post-capitalist situation. And she's just written, and I think that's a really kind of interesting thing for ARI communities too. When I was in Copenhagen, there was a Norwegian group of artists who were talking about the government promoting artists to buy each other's work. So they in fact created a sort of economic community as well, but on a kind of smaller scale, so that these communities could be sort of more independent and autonomous from the art market, but also have some income. But anyway, that was all I've got to say on that. But thanks so much, Sarah, Marco and Steve. It was really great hearing about your projects. They're all really unique and really interesting. Thank you.
Okay, just like to thank the third panel. Thank you very much for ending on a high note there, and the engaging and interesting discussion you had there. So that brings us to the end of the day for today. Thank you to all of our tireless speakers and moderators who have been wonderful throughout the day. They've given their time, experience and knowledge today to unpack the actual events and dialogues around ARI initiatives or art initiatives that are other than commercial or public galleries. And thank you again to our supporters, City of Perth, the DCA and Central TAFE, and to all our volunteers that we've had help us. And thank you to all of you guys for coming down, for asking questions and getting involved in what we do. And ARIs wouldn't survive without all of you supporting them. We appreciate your support and hope that this symposium has given you the opportunity to further think about and discuss how ARIs sit within the landscape that is contemporary art. Just on a final note, you might have noticed that there's some feedback sheets on your seats. We would, if you don't have one there's some just on the desk as you leave. We'd really appreciate if you took a few moments to fill out those feedback sheets, just so that we can learn from today and further develop all of our experiences of ARIs. And thanks again. If you just give another round of applause for all of our speakers. Thank you.